Okay, welcome. Academy Football Network podcast. We're moving. We're getting them in, and loads of great content, loads of interesting people. And again today, someone who I think is moving the environment in terms of youth development and football, initiatives, apps, one-to-one coaching in environments in terms of the academy. Welcome, Saul, Isaksson, Hurst.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. So, as I do at the beginning now, we run through this detailed history of youth development. We're talking USA, we're talking teacher, we're talking Spurs, both working in grassroots and academy. We're talking Chelsea, we're talking your own company in regards to PDA. We're talking my personal coach, Ball Mastery app. Leads me to my question: where are we technically with youth talent
in this country?
Let's start off in this country.
I think we're a lot better than where we were when I started my career in academy football. I think looking at that, I still think there's room to improve. I think there's sort of almost maybe a misunderstanding about what actual technical work is, for example. So if you look at the general type of technical work you see in academy football, it's pass, receive, a lot of ball striking. English football particularly is very direct, generally, conventionally, how quickly can you move the balls, hot potato, pass, and especially now with, Guardiola's great influence on the game. Everything's a rondo, everything's possession, which is good. Yeah. But I think we need to spend a little bit more time on individual possession rather than group possession and supporting players on staying on the ball, understanding how to receive the ball and stay on the ball under pressure. So that's almost working against the natural grain of most academy sessions where it's about move the ball quickly. We're actually saying, now actually can you try and stay on the ball a bit longer and challenge yourself and do something in those areas. And that's really, it's a different way of looking at it, and sometimes you have to be a bit braver because maybe it's going to cost you some games, or you maybe have an effect on the team performance. But it's about really how you measure success, I think, in terms of are you a player developer or are you a team developer. But it's a balance, it's a mix. I'm not saying everything has to be dribble, be crazy. It's about a balance. But for me, I think sometimes we're still missing a trick, particularly in the foundation phase in the early age groups in academy football, where sometimes we could be supporting players in developing that individual technique.
I mean, this is quite interesting in regards to the staying on the ball, because the FA as well went for this quite kind of this strong sense of staying on the ball and being able to stay on the ball. What does staying on the ball look like? Like, if I'm watching staying on the ball, what does that look like? I
talk about it a lot, and we look at players at the highest level, and and players we celebrate and we like to watch and give us those De Bruyne's, Grealish this season, Jack Grealish is doing so well, and that sort of bravery and bravado, we'll call it, on the ball, being able to get on the ball under pressure, stay on it, and maybe make things happen. Look at Thomas Partey the other night. What a complete midfielder he is. He can do all the work off the ball when he gets it. He can play forward, but sometimes it's about maybe taking an extra touch or an extra movement to maybe delay and then play forward. So it looks different all around the pitch, and whether you're a 10 or a 4 or even a defender or a fullback or a striker. But I mean, it's understanding how the importance of 1v1 domination really in player development. And if you look across Europe, the top academies in the world really, the most prolific ones have that as a real key asset to player development. And maybe here we don't have that as yet, but we've still got a great system though. It's not saying it's not good.
So, sorry, where would you be with someone like Roy Keane? So Roy Keane was saying about Grealish, only because you brought up Grealish's name. And I think, not Roy Keane, it was Graham Souness. And Graham Souness was like, the reason why he gets fouled so much is because he holds onto the ball too long, and he's just got to pass it.
Listen, and maybe he has got a point. Probably does get fouled a lot there, and those sorts of players do. And we talk about that in academy football all the time. Young players, those sorts of players do get kicked. Especially in this country when it's about crash, bang, wallop. Can you smash it in? People are celebrating diving headers on the floor, saving the penalty or whatever, more than a player maybe can beat a few players. So it's about having a balance, but it's about understanding. Really at the highest level. If you look at like the top boys who were playing in Madrid and Barcelona and the top clubs in the world. I was fortunate to work at clubs where we wanted to develop Champions League players, and that was the ambition and that's the desire, and those are the assets those players have. So Modric, one of my favourite players growing up, I saw him when I was working at Spurs. Fortunately, that sort of player who's small, who's tired, but he's so good on the ball. He can protect the ball, he can beat players, his movements, his disguise, those sorts of players have those assets. So whether you're a defender who's got to bring it out and protect and spend a bit of time on it, or you're that or that wide player, that classic wide player who's got to beat those players in all different positions. All players have to have that ability these days. And I think if you look probably back, that's where probably the main area that English football has been lacking at the highest level. Now, even in the last World Cup, you could arguably say when we looked against Croatia and our midfielders, particularly, like we just couldn't keep the ball well enough. Couldn't control the game well enough. And you're playing against some of the best midfielders in the world there. And it's interesting to see why Croatia has such a prolific record of producing those types of players. So it's interesting to look at that and understand what are the prerequisites of playing at the highest level, and we want to prepare or develop players at that highest level. We've got to try and support them in developing those.
Are we getting better at it?
Listen, 100%. Look, England's got one of the best youth development systems in the world now. Germany come over to us now, and say, well, how are you producing all these players? It's fantastic. The EPPP and the professionalisation of football, it has created an environment, and also a perfect storm with like the work Dan Ashworth and Gareth Southgate did with the DNA project, and Dan Machichi as well. Those guys who real tore up the script, if you like, and the old way of English youth teams playing, where it was really direct, physical-based recruitment program, where actually now we celebrated and looked for those small technical footballers and played. And Gareth Southgate introduced a modern way of playing football, which we were desperate for, fortunately, and he did that. And that's reflected now in academy football. So we've got some top players, but we still doesn't mean we still haven't got work to go.
Has there been any trade-offs? Because I think about that now in terms of maybe another golden area, because you're talking about maybe, let's say in 2017 for youth development in regards to those England teams that won like 2 or 3 tournaments, or I think it was 4 tournaments in regards to 20s, to 17s, to 19s. They all won a kind of a major competition, and now we're kind of seeing a kind of this golden era of ball masters really, and staying on the balls like what you're talking about. Do we then lose the other side of the game in regards to maybe in years before where we produce good defenders, good passing the balls? You think about someone like David Beckham, you go and he was an excellent passer. Do we lose those players now?
I think he's still getting the passes and those sort of things, but I think there's definitely an issue around defenders. It's an unusual sort of environment where we just used to be our main strong point, where we could only produce defenders. We're amazing, all those Ferdinand, Terry, and Sol Campbell, those guys. But it's unusual, and maybe it is because of the environment and the way we're playing now, and it's all a bit too ticky-tacky, what people might generalise it as, and there's not enough, battling, or why are there no those natural defensive leaders? But it's. If I had to go one way, I'd still come back this way.
We all want to see those sorts of players. Let's be honest. We all we like a good tackle sometimes, but actually we like people who can stay on the ball, excite us on the ball. And
they say, and it takes football's. What's great about football? It's all shapes and sizes, and different sorts of personalities and different sorts of players. That's why you need that mix. But it's I suppose it's difficult, isn't it?
So, I mean, just looking at your background in terms of you're working, you've come from America. Teacher as well in terms of education, so you kind of learn as well through being in an education environment. I feel you kind of learn the process or the pathway in terms of learning for a young person, which I think is great. I'm not saying all coaches need to go into teaching, but it's nice when you can see that contrast of support in terms of youth development from a teacher's lens. Then you probably work in I would argue 2 in the top 5 leading academies so if you're talking Spurs, who've produced loads of players over the years, through youth, pathway into the first team, or definitely within the game. Then Chelsea, you could argue probably one of the leading youth developers. Yes, Man City won the Youth Cup, and there's kind of that kind of, everyone looks at the Youth Cup as how well your academy's doing, really, don't they? I don't know why, but different people have different indicators of whether or not it's doing well. But often that's kind of looked at. Then you go into your own PDA. Tell us about that.
Well, actually, I went to America after uni and started my coaching career there. Did 2 years there, and then came back, and everyone was doing privates. If you're out there, you coach, and you do someone else, you can do some one-to-one.
So is that quite big in America?
It's huge. I mean, that's where it came from. The culture, there's everyone, parents are busy, if you like, or keen as mustard, as they say. But so doing that, I came back, I was like, that's interesting. And I came back and actually started running camps, but doing one-to-one as well. And I soon came to realise that the camps were a bit of a nightmare, saturated market, it's snowing, no one turns up. And then I was doing one-to-ones, it's great, very little liability in terms of overheads and like facility hires and stuff like that. And I just sort of moved into it, and I sort of was fortunate, but I sort of got a reputation rather quickly for supporting players into academy football, so training them up and getting them trials and getting them successful through trials, and sort of made a reputation there, and then also got some players into the academy, so a couple of big players as well. So then that sort of eased me into the academy as well. So I was quite fortunate.
How did you build that network? How did you build that network from having the boys, supporting them individually, to then being able to obviously facilitate them?
Well, I was lucky. Well, I came back. That's the other thing. So I came back, and from my America, and I got a job at the foundation, or the community scheme as it was called then, and worked in schools and stuff like that. Very lucky at the time then as well, when John McDermott had taken over, and he sort of saw the value of having 100 or so coaches in this community and trying to get them integrated.
Yeah.
So then we became parts of the development centres and stuff like that, and we were encouraged to talent spot basically.
Yeah.
We got brought in to see sessions and showing the level and stuff like that, and then what was expected. So that was my way in, if you like. Very fortunate, good timing, and my sort of first.
Is that something that we missed the trick? I think you probably find at the higher level, and you're talking about maybe the Category 1 clubs, it's such a big organisation in terms of an academy, where maybe that same community feel linked to the academy probably happens at I don't want to say the lower category, so to speak.
Yeah, it's interesting because Chelsea did the same thing just when I was leaving. They started integrating the community a lot more and trying to encourage the coaches to come in and see the level, and getting more coaches sort of recruiting coaches from there as well. That became like a route for coaching into the academy, which is, but I mean, so it seems like a no-brainer, isn't it? You've got all these coaches on the ground, they're all wearing the same badge, and they're seeing hundreds of thousands of players every week, spotting these sort of the gems. So I think more and more clubs are going down that route, and it was good fortune for me, so that gave me my foot in the door and my opportunity to go and then get a development centre, and then my way into like the academy, get the under-9 job, my first academy job.
So best age group days.
Under 9s
and 10, best age group. I'm telling you.
Fresh, lively, fun.
Yeah, so much fun. That first year coaching 9s academy, like I remember my first game, I assisted because when Danny Buck was there. This was a season before, and playing Arsenal at Hale End. It was like amazing. It was like that was Georgie Marsh's year and all those boys, and it was like they were going at it.
Yeah,
it was like wow,
just
under 9
fun energy.
It was like, just intensity. It was like this was a proper London like scrap tear up derby.
Under 9s derby.
Great. It was amazing, and it was like this is fun.
Oh gosh.
It was great.
So I mean, just talking about that in terms of you coming back and having your own sort of, I want to say, the start of your kind of one-to-one culture, developing from America. Why one-to-one coaching? Why in terms of, now I go to, say for example, I played in an academy, for example. I'm a under 10s. Why do I need one-to-one coaching on top of, I've got the best coaches, arguably, the most qualified coaches, arguably. Why do I need a one-to-one coach as well?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question. Well, for me, it's like, look, the best players in the world always do more. So like, if you're in an academy, for example, you're training 3 times a week and then you're playing a game. That's not enough training. So whether you're doing something with me or you're doing something by yourself, you should be doing some more work. You obviously have another night, do another sport, but you need to be working hard. It's such a competitive market, and the chances of progressing are very low. If you want to be, you've got to be competing to be one of the best players in your squad, or aspire to be one of the best players in your team, and then and progressing up. And that's the reality. I mean, that's the harsh reality of the industry. So, you want to, the more work you put in, the better you are, and that's just the basic reality. Is like anything else in life, basically. So. The thing I offer is, the way I look at things is a little bit different, and that's fortunate because I offer something different to what academies offer in terms of the technical work, which I talked about, and that individual stuff. So, like, over the years, I've been doing this for nearly 20 years now. I've worked with players from all the academies, some from even from the north, and they say the same thing. We don't get this at the academy, this type of work, because it is, and I've been there. I know how difficult it was, particularly in my last club. The expectation is that you're judged on the Sunday. How your team play, and the pressure as well. Well, if I'm going to coach my team to play possession and play really quickly, we win the game. That looks really great. It looks like a pretty game of football. In reality, actually, that actually can be potentially going the other way, and actually taking the individual work away from players.
That's what I was saying. It could be detrimental.
Exactly,
to the
it is. And
unless you get it right within academies,
exactly.
And of course they do.
Listen, and it's about balance. So I was fortunate. I worked under Chris Ramsey. We talked about, we were chatting earlier. He, for me, probably one of the best player developers I've ever seen. I worked for, amazing. And he would just, he was just said, look, it's all about the individual. Don't want to see any pretty games of football. None of this like defending or from corners, all this rubbish. Just go out there, make it like a playground environment. And that's what we did there in terms of, just players, lots of little small-sided, lots of little battles, 1v1 sort of gladiator type things. Make it like that, playground, in a city, sort of cage type environment. And you get such amazing type outcomes then. And it might take a little bit longer for players to get to that sort of team thing, but when you get to 11s, and I saw this myself, when you get to 11s, because I took the 11s as well, it's so much easier then to trade possession and 1-2 touch, because they're technically so amazing.
Yeah.
And they can pop it there, but they can also break the line with the pass, or they can break the line with the ball at the feet, and that is priceless for players. Do you know what I mean? So whether they're going to end up as a right back or a striker, that's the difference.
You know what I found at that level, Saul, was managing some of the parents. So at the 9s and 10s, they would always say, they don't pass the ball to my son. And I'll be thinking, okay, but you're still trying to develop individuals. How did you manage that? Or did it even come up?
It's difficult, because at Spurs it was almost like we were just like extremists, because it was just like, don't pass. We don't want you to pass. It's boring. It's just like, just go for it. Yeah. But we play 6v6 small-sided format, and just loads of turnovers anyway, and we'd end up small pitch, and interesting, we'd end up winning most games anyway, because the players are so good in those sort of tight situations. But you just sort of say, you just got to play, just go and get on the ball, encourage it. Look, some players want to move it anyway, and that's fine, because they naturally want to do that. So you just say, look, you got to make the decision. You do what you want to do, but can you sort of try and find a way to solve the problem yourself? That's the main thing. This is what this work's all about. So for instance, I'm lucky, I do a lot of travelling around the world and present at like conferences, and I see I work with players, and I do like a 2v2 game, for example, and you notice that players they're just looking always up for the pass, which is fair enough, but sometimes you've got to say, when you put them in those 1v1 duels, I want you to solve that problem yourself. That's the real,
good player. The better players are generally good decision makers or problem solvers.
I'll do it, or I can, and it doesn't have to be I've got a dribble pass and do 10 step overs or whatever. It might just be little cut outside boom and then play through or whatever. So it looks different for all types of players, but everyone sort of will be a better player if they have that ability, basically.
And what was because I always loved playing Tottenham. That was my favourite game at Palace. Tottenham, that was the best game, because we had a lot of boys that were like the state boys, so they enjoyed the kind of, we call it sticky foot. This don't pass the ball, it's like dribble. So with that being said, what was the move? Because Tottenham sounds perfect for you. Tottenham sounds like the perfect place to be at. Like, the ethos there is to a lot of one-to-one stuff. I'm not too sure on the Chelsea philosophy, but it seems a bit more team oriented. Like, what was the thing? Why did you want to maybe leave it?
Yeah, I think it was like it's like funny working under Chris. You thought you were almost, following through the gates of hell. It's like, well, yes, Chris, whatever you say, just because he was such a, idealist, we were all sort of fed off that. Chris moved up basically, and then went to work with the 23s and became less involved in the academy. And then there was a slight change in the tone and the atmosphere and the culture. But I was still an idealist, and then suddenly I was getting involved in battles I shouldn't be or didn't need to be. Fortunately, an opportunity came up, because I knew I always wanted to work at Chelsea, because I was very ambitious. And when you go there, this is the times when, before Tottenham's new ground, you go to Cobham, and this is amazing. And as you say, Chelsea were and probably still are the biggest players on the block in academy football. Man City now are trying to catch them, and so in terms of investment, no one gets near Chelsea and Man City. So it was always my ambition to work there, because I wanted to challenge myself and be the best coach I could be. And I'd done almost 10 years at the club, but like 5-6 years in the academy, whatever. And I thought, and the opportunity came up, and I thought, and the timing was right. Chris had left, and I thought, I could do that, and it was a great opportunity. So it was too good an opportunity to turn down, really. But in answer to your question, it was different, a very different culture, very different methodology, like really different. And funny, because it took me a while to adapt. And now I was when I first started taking the nines, for example, Sampa, and Sampa Chibley is like one of my best friends. It's still one of my best friends, but we were sort of clashing. I was like, no, I want to do everything in tight, small spaces. Like, no, we do everything in big spaces.
Run, get them to run.
He's like, no, we're doing 77s. So his target, I was like, nah, yeah. And it was like we had a bit of a clash, but then it improved me as a coach so much, because I learnt an airway, which was fantastic as well. So I was very like tunnel vision in terms of everything had to be tight spaces, 1v1 ball marking, and then that was a different way of doing things. Learning how to do things really improved me, because it's a top academy. So obviously I brought my little bit in there as well, and I helped change that, introduce a bit more ball mastery and 1v1 and that sort of thing, but learned a lot in terms of what they did for him. But yeah, it was definitely a different philosophy, and it was a bit more team orientated and a lot more possession and quick play and stuff. But then my real challenge was, right, how can I get that, those 1v1 outcomes as well and that sort of thing. But it was amazing privilege working at a club, because I always say it like that. The culture there was like so intense. Like their intention to be the best academy in the world, and the expectations were really high. So it was such a great challenge. I really thrived off that, and it was a really great club to work for.